I want to start by saying something which is both incredibly obvious as well as a little bit counterintuitive. Streets were not built for cars. With cities around the world being hundreds or even thousands of years old, clearly streets and roads predate the motor car. In fact, streets in most major cities look vastly different than they did in the time before cars, generally with a lot more life. That said, these days, most streets are built for cars, with their size and capability taken into account. They've become the dominant vehicle on streets and roads. In fact, if you look at something which can't be driven on, you might not even think that it's a street. So take a look at this. I'm on South 13th Street in Kansas City, and it's a style of street unlike any other. One of the most famous scenes in modern cinema is from the 2019 film Joker. That was filmed in the Bronx in New York City at West 100... a tongue twister these ones. Blah. In West 167th Street. The location is an iconic part of the film, and it even appeared on the poster and has become an internet meme, as well as a popular place for tourists to visit.
I come over here and take pictures.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea.
This is an example of a step street. That's a type of street or thoroughfare for pedestrians rather than being paved for motor vehicles. They're generally used in cities in places that are too steep for cars, being shorter distances that are more practical for people. And while they're not common, there are examples of these all around the world. Now, not all steps are step streets, but places that are prime candidates for step streets are cities that have extremely hilly terrain, and that of course includes San Francisco. So step streets do appear on maps, although of course the Google Street View car can't generally get through to show you. The Leon Street steps, for example, connect Leon Street for 2 blocks over a steep hill with over 300 steps. Basically, it's too steep for cars, so this was installed instead. Filbert Street is another San Fran step street that kicks in when the terrain gets too much for vehicles. One of the most famous streets in Paris, and indeed the world, is Rue Foyatière, and it's a beautiful spot and has become a popular and iconic place for photographers. Coming in at 222 steps and around 36 metres, there is an alternative in the form of a funicular for those that want another way up. And that's a good option, because one obvious limitation of step streets is that people that have mobility needs might struggle. If you're gonna talk about step streets, you really should mention Pittsburgh. That's home to more public staircases than anywhere in America, more than 800 sets of steps. That's more than 45,000 individual steps. Back in 1937, a war correspondent, Ernie Pyle, had this to say. And then the steps, oh lord, the steps. I was actually told they had a department of steps. This isn't exactly true, although they do have an inspector of steps. But there are nearly 15 miles of city-owned steps going up mountainsides. It must have been laid out by a mountain goat. The city takes its steps seriously. There's an online steps assessment tool to support, and I quote, Pittsburgh's favourite infrastructure. It's such an important part of the city that they've warranted multiple books, a local neighbourhood organisation even organises Step Trek, a fitness and social event taking in thousands of steps in the south of the city. South 13th Street here is less famous than the ones I've spoken about, but its story is pretty straightforward. It was built in 1913 to get up this steep hill. When it was installed, it was the only way up the hill. But what makes it special is this is the only step street left in Kansas. So it's not in great state. You can get up to the first street, but right at the top it started to degrade and you can't get through anymore. And Kansas is a state as flat as a pancake. From this tiny car-free step street, I'm Julian O'Shea.